And for those that are new here, SHTF News, we like to look at some of the things that are rocking around the world. So let's get into that right about now.
And now, the news. Stand by. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to tonight's news. See, I remembered the paper this time to shuffle about. Welcome to the SHTF News with your host, Andy. It's the 30th of October, 2021. And we've got a few news segments that we'll be sharing with you tonight. The actual segments for the actual news items for the main top stories. I haven't even seen them yet. I've literally just opened up all the tabs from Magic Hand, who I need to give a shout out to as well. She is my one and only. Thank you for being you, my darling. She's helped me so much with this show. It's literally a one-man band, but really a two-man band, although she's not a man, if you know what I mean. But she's a human, so, you know, man is short for human. Justin Trudeau doesn't know that, if anyone knows what I'm talking about. It's like, no, we like to say people kind, not mankind. It's like, no, Justine. Humankind. Mankind is just short for humankind. Anyway, yeah, thank you, my darling, for helping me put the news together. So, top stories we'll start off with first, and we'll see we've got rocking around the world, and see what interesting bits and pieces has been happening. So, we'll just have a quick jump through here. So, J&J, we know who we're talking about, settles most Risperdal lawsuits with $800 million in expenses. WTAF. So yeah, that's not a good look, is it? Johnson & Johnson said it's settled most of the lawsuits it faced by thousands of men who claimed its antipsychotic drug, Risperdal, caused them to develop excessive breast tissue, and disclosed that it recorded $800 million in expenses in connection with the agreement. So that's not sounding good, is it? Develop excessive breast. So basically what we're talking about is man boobs. Yeah? You go in... you go... What was it even for? What was it even for? You go in with whatever you go in with, and you come out with man boobs. Thanks for that. Jesus. Although there could be a new market for that, amongst other communities. But yeah, so that's interesting. Johnson & Johnson up to usual tricks. What we got next? The COVID, you know what? US intelligence agencies admit the true origins of coronavirus may never be known. Ba, ba, ba. We're never gonna know. So... things could get worse for a long time, PM warns. This is Mr. Boris Johnson. Warns G20 of dark ages if climate change not tackled. Dark ages. It's interesting, dark ages, because the dark ages is very, very rarely spoken about, and they never teach about it in school. It's just like period of history, it's just blurred out. We'll never know what the dark ages even were. So humanity can go backwards if the world fails to urgently tackle climate change, Boris Johnson has warned as he appealed to the world's leading economies to do more to cut emissions. So we've obviously seen the old climate change thing sort of ramping up recently, and of course with the G20 summit and stuff like that, the COP26 and all these other different proposals being put forward for ways to try and do it. You know, for me, I'm sort of pretty focused on pollution. I think that's a big problem. I think that's the thing that needs to be dealt with. And, you know, it's important we take care of this place, right? Because this is where we keep all our stuff. There's a meme that's like, protect the planet, because that's where I keep all my stuff. Oh, dear. 3 shot dead during nationwide protests against Sudan coup. So we've still got SHTF rocking about in Sudan. It does make you wonder if we're ever going to see any stability in some of these countries, doesn't it? And what it's going to take to achieve it. But military forces shot dead 3 people during nationwide protests in Sudan on Saturday, medics said, as tens of thousands of people demanded the restoration of a civilian-led government after a military coup. How many times do you hear the word military coup in places like Sudan in the same sentence? Quite a lot, right? Awful scenario, because, I mean, Magic Hand and I have lived through a military coup ourselves, so we've experienced that firsthand, which is, you know, living around the world and stuff. It's funny what you encounter and what becomes normal in some ways, right? So yeah, it's never a good thing, and it disrupts everything with the economy and everything. It's not just, you know, society breaks apart. It's nasty. So, you know, prayers going out to anybody in Sudan. Queen Elizabeth II told by doctors to rest for at least 2 weeks will not carry out official visits. So it looks like she's not getting amazingly better. Obviously, she's sort of been ill recently, and you know, we're keeping her eye on seeing how she's getting on. Obviously, she's not young, so you know, she's done very well to get to where she's got to. But so keep an eye on that. US is deeply skeptical and considering taking tougher action as Iran says it will return to nuclear talks. So again, we're starting to see the old usual business ramping up between certain people. Do you know what? Last year, for those that remember, I did make mention of things like Thucydides' trap and things like you know, China and de-Sinicization, where people are navigating away from China, and particularly Australia is doing everything they can to sort of become more independent from China's stranglehold and things like that. And you got the Thucydides trap, where you got an up-and-coming superpower that challenges an existing superpower like the American Empire, and you know, it never really ends well. So we like to keep our eye on some of these conflicts and things. And of course, you know, we are nearing a time where they like to try and, how can I say, they like to try and promote the instability of the world, because this is around the time where we start setting next year's military budget. So it's important there's a reason to have a big budget, right? If you know what I mean. So bear in mind, this part we do mainstream, so just bear with it. COVID-19 failure to tackle global vaccine inequality at G20 summit could prolong pandemic. I don't even know what to say about any of this at this point. Biden drives through Rome in 85 car motorcade ahead of COP26 climate summit. So there's no irony in that now, is there? It's funny, I saw another report on that, and it calculated like the actual carbon footprint just of his motorcade on its own, let alone the old Air Force One getting there with all the backup equipment and people and troops and cars, and lot of energy to go and have a chat about saving energy. We love it. So I think that's the main roundup for the main top stories today, and just seeing what the so what are we on to next? Let's pop on to just checking what we're up to in the chat. So we got the disaster maps yet, and of course we had quite an active week, didn't we? Where I came, and I did promise you last week in the Ultimate live show on Saturday, the Saturday live show, sorry, that if I did see anything happen during the week, I would pop on with the sort of breaking news, and of course that's what ended up what's happened. So let's go and check in on that then and see what's going on with the sun, because that was what caused the issue with the breaking news at that point. Not sure why it doesn't want to. Oh, I know why, because it's looking for the disaster map, innit? It's because we want to be on that one. No, we don't. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Yeah, so start off with a disaster map, and still got a warning there for Kilauea. Still got a warning there for La Palma. We've got a volcano in Ecuador as well, which has just been updated. So looks like we've got some floods in northeastern United States, and a volcano as well in Guatemala. And you know what? It's not a coincidence that we see all this, you know, seismic activity around here, and the volcanic activity, when we got 38 earthquakes in the last 24 hours, over 2.5 magnitude. These are, you know, obviously we're looking out for things rocking around La Palma area for the volcano. But as we found on Thursday, they don't seem to be listing these anymore, which is somewhat concerning. So it's difficult to check in on it. So yeah, 38 earthquakes, I would call that about average. We'll see when we get to the space weather part of it, and we'll see if we're expecting more quake activity as that solar flare arrives on Earth, which will be over the next 24 hours, I would say. We'll just check in on the windy map and see what's going on in here. We like to just check in on the air quality because it's interesting to see what's going on. With all these volcanoes, it's important to check the sulfur levels, which can result in acid rain. And as you can see here, this is a La Palma volcano spewing out this business. We'll just pop a pin in there and see just how much we've got going on there. 198 milligram per meter squared. I'll tell you what, anything above 72 is bad news. Anything above 72 is bad news. So when we got 200 here, luckily that's off the coast, look. By the time it gets onto the mainland, it's not too bad. But look, we've got stuff rocking about down here. Don't even know what that is. Is that another volcano? Look, 226. So you don't want to be living there right now. Look at this. China. And I tell you what, this area of China here with all this, you know, the air quality, that's nothing to do. That's nothing to do with volcanic ash. We all know what that's to do with. So, worth keeping your eye on that. So yeah, let's jump back to the news agenda. That's the disaster maps, just to see if there's any immediate threats happening. So we'll move on to the space weather, and we'll just see what that's got in store for us today, leading on from where we had on Thursday with this X-class solar flare that came in. So here we are here with solarham.net, and we like to check it in and just make sure we see what's going on. There's a few things that are noteworthy on here whenever you're checking on solarham.net. What I tend to do, this area here where you see this purple 7G3, purple 7G3, this is not ideal. This is what's going to be coming predicted, forecast over the next 24 hours. Look, the 30th and the 30th and the 31st. So I've seen it on 8 before. I've seen this number on 8 in a G4 storm, and that did indeed take out some power. I think it was in Canada, and then the following year it took out the power in New Zealand, which was on 7 or a G3, and I've seen it taken out on. But this one, I think if it gets here early, it means it was faster than they thought it was. But this here will let you see, right? This will start ramping up. You see the speed here and the density, and you'll see that ramping up. But I think it was predicted originally at 1200 kilometers per second, which is pretty quick. And again, you expect that from an X-class solar flare, which is what we saw happen. So we're just checking on the D-level absorption layer, which gives you an idea of the interference going on with the atmospherics for transmission. This is what causes blackouts with radio communications versus power. So you can see the poles there lighting up with all the energy being absorbed in the poles. But that's not looking too severe. And you can see the top right corner there, all green boxes is what we like to see, yeah? So, but when this thing starts hitting us, look, you see this was the main thing. This point here was where we saw the X-class. Look, here's your scale on the side. XMCBA, X being the largest. And this is on a magnitude, this is a non-linear scale. So like an X2 is 10 times bigger than an X1. You know, it's like earthquake scale. So, you know, it's epic. And of course we had another M-class there. But in terms of what I think we've got coming in, this is what we'll see here, the geomagnetic activity as it's happening. So this one down the bottom here is what we'll be looking for. And then as this, you see October 31st, we would expect this to go red big time and high, you know, up to the G, what did they reckon, a G3, G4? Yeah. So we should see some orange business and red business over the next 24 hours. But as I said to a few people in the comments section of the SHTF solar flare news we had on Thursday, I don't really have much fear of any grid down scenario. I don't think it's going to be as powerful as that. But we do need to be aware of any X-class flare, especially something like what we had popping off the sun, because it was very, very so Earth-facing that it is always a risk. And a good way of looking at it is the Enlil spiral. I could do a showing you the Enlil spiral. That's more useful, isn't it? Why isn't it showing up? See, I always get suspicious when they remove. Oh, sorry, it's here, my mistake. Here we go. So this Enlil spiral, what it will show you, the yellow bit in the middle is the sun, and these are the planets around the outside, right? And the green one is us. And so what the Enlil spiral does is it looks at the solar flare as it came off the sun, and it will predict its trajectory and to see if it's Earth facing. You can see that they're coming off, yeah? Now this one here is actually looking from the top, yeah? This is looking down on our orbit, yeah? And this one at the bottom is looking from the side, because sometimes it can appear like it's Earth facing, but it's going down below us or above us, yeah? But as you can see here on both metrics, you've got the X, Y, and the Z, they're both hitting us. Boom, look at that, it's not even white, it's black. Yeah, you see here in the middle of where it hits us? It's dead on. And look at it when looking from the side, look, it's neither too high or too low, it's boom, straight in there, yeah? If anything, looks like it's going to get us the southern hemisphere more, but we'll see. That's my understanding of reading these graphs after following things like Suspicious Observers for many, many years and supporting his channel quite a lot over the years when I could afford to, and his Kickstarter campaign. So I've learned so much from him. So it's worth following Suspicious Observers. He's got a great channel on YouTube. He's so consistent. He's on there every morning with the news. It's good to see what's going on. So for more in-depth information, you can always follow Suspicious Observers, and I'll perhaps start putting links like that in the chat. In the comments. For those that are viewing the video after it's been live. So you can see here as well on the right hand side graph, this is the timeline. So this will predict when it's going to get here, and this does update because it is kind of somewhat reliant on the prediction of the velocity. And like I said, originally it was predicted at 1252 kilometers per second, but as I've seen recently, they've downgraded that to about 800. I mean, 800 kilometers a second is still nothing to shake a stick at, right? But you can see this massive spike here where that energy is going to hit our shields. And for those that followed Thursday, I explained in detail how Earth's shields at the moment are pretty much, they're pretty low as a result of our magnetosphere, which is what protects us from the solar radiation and galactic and cosmic rays. So as a result, it's kind of things like that make our shields being lower than they should be, our magnetic field being less than it should be, makes us more susceptible to things like solar flare activity. This is why we're a bit more worried about it now than we have been in previous years or decades, right? And our reliance on power and our reliance on telecommunications and things now is mission critical type infrastructure, right? We can't afford to lose it because we lose everything if we do. That's why it's so important. So let's have a look then. It's second to last here. We've got our we'll just check in and see what's going on in cyber world and see what the hacking levels are at. Doesn't look too bad actually. To those who don't know, looking at this, it might look bad. It is. It's real-time live hacking as it's happening, and DDoS, denial of service attacks and things on different servers around the world being reported or being detected, and it just gives us an idea of sort of what level of attacks going on to see if there's any concerted effort by some sort of foreign nation or whatever. Or sort of cyber terrorist group going on. We'll see it here first. I will be adding the Downdetector here as well weekly, so we can check in and see what services are having problems around the world and what could be affecting you. So United Kingdom, again, the top attack target this week, 2.7 billion attacks in the last 24 hours, followed by United States and then Malaysia. That's the same as what last week, I think, wasn't it? But the top attack origins are coming from the United States and France and the EU, sorry. So yeah, always good to check in on that. And then finally, we always like to check in on the economy. We're not the economy really. We just basically check the Bitcoin prices. To be honest, it's that's all we need to look at, isn't it? Excuse me, still getting over my cold flu type thing, as you can hear, but I'm feeling much better now than I was. So let's just check in to see what Bitcoin and the current cryptocurrencies are doing. You see, there's a little bit of a sea of red. So yeah, there's a lot going on at the moment. There's a lot of movers and shakers, and there's a lot of mainstream media that's starting to talk about cryptos. And Matt Damon came out with some segment sponsoring it as well. So there's going to start seeing quite a lot of movement on this over this next week. Again, this is something I'm going to get into on another show separately, because I think there's a lot to be talked about here that we need to start, making sure everybody's up to speed and up to scratch on what's coming down the pike when it comes to things like blockchain technologies. And I've been a blockchain programmer, so I understand it from the inside out. And there's a lot of things that I can share with you that I think would be very useful for you to understand what's going on here, what's going on long term, and how it's going to be used positively and negatively against us and for us, right? So it's going to be interesting. I think it's important. So yeah, we're hoping to see some change over the next week. So expect some mainstream news on cryptos coming over the next week. I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, thank you very much. That's been Andy for the SHTF news on the 30th of October.